I drink wine. I know right now that's not the popular opinion, but I do. I don't drink it every single day, and I try to stick with dry farms. Shout out Todd and David. However, if you're trying to lose belly fat, alcohol is not going to be helping you at all. So think about it. If you are drinking alcohol, your body now is going to metabolize that first, ahead of everything else. And so you're not burning fat, you're metabolizing alcohol, right? You're not burning sugar, you're metabolizing alcohol. So that's the first thing. And we know it causes you to lay down more visceral adipose tissue. So that's where I take it out. If someone's working on losing belly fat, this isn't going to be your friend. Once you're close to where you want to be, I think you can cycle in some. Now, if you're not drinking, this is not, oh, go start drinking. But if you're someone who loves red wine, I grew up outside of the wine country. I don't drink California wines anymore, really, though. But if you're someone who loves red wine, 1 or 2 days a week, I don't see it as an issue once you're where you want to be. But again, when you're working on getting there, I view this as I'm doing what I need to do to heal my metabolism. And I want to make my body really good at building muscle, burning off fat. And if I throw alcohol into that, then it's focusing on burning alcohol, not burning fat. That's not helpful.
It's a temporary distraction for your body.
Right.
When you're trying to achieve your goals. Once you've achieved your goals.
Yeah. Or you're close, and you're doing it 1 or 2 days a week. I don't see the issue. If you're someone who has to have bottles every day, that's a whole different story. That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah. We talked about this idea, and you talked about this idea of being where you want to be. And before we go to the 5th hack that we have, which plays right into this, the thing that I want to chat about for a second is that a lot of people actually they think they know where they want to be, but they don't have an accurate assessment of their body fat percentage. They don't have an accurate assessment of their lean muscle mass. How do you recommend, and what are your best tools that are out there for people to get a snapshot? And how important is it when you work with your clients? How important is it at the beginning that they know exactly where they stand so they can track where they want to be?
I don't know how you do this without knowing that. Like the single most important thing in a perfect world, we would not have scales. We would only have body composition. Because the scale has done so much emotional damage to people over the years. Now, I am 5'11", 6 feet tall, and I've been lifting weights since I was 16. And I remember going in and wanting to become a model, right? And them telling me I needed to lose, gosh, I'm trying to think of what it was. It was like 20 pounds at least. And I look about like what I look right now then, right? I was a little, not as muscular, but basically, I was about the same. I can't lose 20 pounds. It's not physically possible. I'd have to lose muscle in order to do it. And it messed me up completely. And I know I'm not like, we have to know what our weight is made up of. And if we did that, if we used a scale as a biometric tool rather than as a mean friend, right? And we really had all the information, it would shift so much. And then you'd also be able to see what's your best body composition for you. Like I've always been a super muscular person. I'm an adopted gal. When I met my birth mom, she had the same body type. That is our body type. I always wanted to be the curvy one. I'm not the curvy one. I could try as hard as I wanted. If I gain weight, I just get wider. I don't get curvy. Doesn't happen. So we all have to find that best body type for us. And then monitor with body composition to make sure that we are holding onto our muscle to, as we know, like bone density is a lagging indicator of poor muscle mass, that we have quality muscle, because it's not just about having muscle. You don't want fat infiltrated muscle. You don't want to be a ribeye. You want to be a fillet. And that our body fat is not dangerous. There's a huge difference between having body fat on your thighs and hips and having body fat around your viscera, right? So we want to make sure that we have body fat in the right places. So we can't tell that with a scale. And I can't tell you how many people DM me on Instagram saying, well, this isn't working. I go, but you tell me what your body composition is. They go, we haven't tested. I go, then how do you know? You don't know. You have no idea by just stepping on the scale what's happening here. You can't see under the hood. So we have to know our starting points. I mean, same with food. if you're going to be making sure that you're getting the right amount of protein in, you have to weigh it. How would you know? Even dietitians tend to underestimate what they eat by 25%. If they're not doing it, how does the average person have any idea of eyeballing how much food that they're eating, right? So in every one of these things, doesn't mean you have to do it forever, although I think we should be managing body composition forever. We should do that. That should be something that's just part of your routine, and the research bears that out, that those people maintain their weight better.
So let's talk about that. Good, better, best in terms of measuring your body composition. What's available to us in the tools that are out there for first us to get a baseline and then track our progress along the way?
So the very best is cost prohibitive, would be an MRI. So the best, I think, for what we have is DEXA. And I mean, those are so easy to get now. And even if you just did it once a year, think about, like, this used to be something you only did for bone mineral density, and you didn't do it until you were in your late 50s, early 60s to show that you had osteoporosis. So it's like, let's go see that the eggs are cracked. It's so ridiculous. You can't uncrack them. So this is something that we should be doing in teens, when we can actually start to make a demonstrable difference in bone mineral density. So if we started doing this, let's say someone did this in their teens and it was just part of the annual physical, like they did that, they did a VO2 max and some push-up tests. Imagine how amazing this would be. And then ideally, once you hit 40 plus, maybe every 6 months, but then what you can do is correlate it. So at home, you could get a bioimpedance scale. So DEXA is going to be the best thing that you could do.
Typically, you have to go to like a clinic or a doctor's office. There's a lot of centers.
Not expensive. They're now under $100. A lot of doctors now have something called an in-body scan. And an in-body is bioimpedance, which is based on total body water. And it sends a wave up your body and tests the resistance to it. And the resistance to it is how much body fat. It predicts body fat and predicts it in specific areas. So it's predictive based on total body water, which means that if your total body water is lower that day, you're dehydrated, you will look like you are fatter, right? You've got more body fat. If you're super hydrated, you'll look like you have less body fat, but your weight will go up. So this is where this is a little bit challenging because we fluctuate, right? And this is why what I like to do is have someone have a bioimpedance scale at home. They do their DEXA. They come home, they check where they are at home for over a week, every single day. They get that average and they can correlate it. I know that my DEXA reads me lower than my at-home scale by a couple percentage points, right? But I can use my at-home scale just to make sure that I'm staying where I want to be. And what I think we should do is just have a Bluetooth. You don't even have to look at it if this makes you nuts, but you just take the average over a week. Because you cannot look at your weight every day and make any kind of intelligent decision, because weight fluctuates a couple, can go up a couple pounds, down a couple pounds based on what you ate, right? Or if you traveled. So we don't look at the daily to make a decision or beat ourselves up. We look at the average over a week, and then once a week do measurements as well, do that waist and hip to look at it as well. But what we're looking for is, am I losing body fat, and specifically body fat around my waist? Am I able to hold on to or build muscle? Those are the things we've got to look at and make the decisions based on.
This goes into number 5, your 5th hack that's there. And it's often when people hear about it, there's a little bit of resistance. And I'm not talking about resistance training. There's a little bit of resistance because it feels like a tough or intimidating thing to do, and it's tracking. Talk to us about why tracking is so key, and then let's talk about how to do it to actually be successful long-term to support body composition changes and burning belly fat.
Right. And I think with this tracking, I'm really talking about food tracking, although I really think we should be tracking food, sleep, stress, movement, and body composition. Whew, that's a lot. Now, here's the thing. Don't have to track those all forever. However, as you're learning about your body, these things are fantastic. So step 1, now when we talk about tracking food, this doesn't mean you have to track your food forever. But I think as you're starting, you need to track your food for at least a month. And what I like to do is you've got to get a food scale. They're $10. So this isn't something that's hard to do. It's even more important than the measuring. You've got to weigh. So for 1 month, you start out, and the first thing I have people do is just get their protein optimized, eat protein first, and track and focus on that. We haven't changed anything else. All we're focusing on is tracking what you're eating and making sure you're getting the right amount of protein. Then I like to upgrade the plate and start to make sure you're getting in 5 or more servings of non-starchy vegetables, a little bit of healthy fruit, and then we'll start to look at fat. And if someone's looking, they go, okay, I want to actually drop some body fat and either recomp, lose body fat, add muscle, or also lose some overall weight, then we'll start to look at what we need to do to shift calories. But at least at that point, we've been tracking and we know how much you're averagely eating a day. Like I know what my average calories are to maintain my weight, right? Because I've been doing it for so long. I know just where I need to hit, what feels good. And some days I eat a little more, some days I eat a little less, it's fine. So that's the first place. And honestly, I hear so often people telling me I'm stuck, nothing's happening. And then they'll do that and go, oh, oops. I thought I was eating a lot more protein than I was. I didn't realize how many carbs I was eating. I mean, I think last time I told you the story of my husband who was 25% body fat. And, he was eating like half a bag of Siete chips every night and a bunch of hummus. And I was like, why are we eating before we're eating? Like this was pre-dinner. Didn't make any sense. But that was great feedback for him. And then, of course, the next thing is to make sure you're tracking that body composition. I think it's important. And the research is pretty clear that people who track their weight are better at maintaining their weight. I just want to make sure you're tracking your body composition because we don't want to maintain your weight. If you weigh the same at 50 that you did at 30, but you aren't actively doing resistance training, it's not the same weight, right? You might be a size or two bigger at the same weight. That was my husband his waist size was 2 inches bigger. Totally different body composition. Because if we are not actively supporting and building our muscle mass as we age, we will lose it, as we know. And then the other part is tracking that sleep. And man, I just read a study where they looked at short sleepers, 4.5 hours. They took people down to 4.5 hours of sleep versus 8.5 hours of sleep and, basically stopped their weight loss. Like couldn't lose weight, couldn't build muscle. You've got to, you basically really put blocks on muscle protein synthesis when you're not sleeping well. So sleep is critical. And of course, managing stress. Now, I don't start with all of this at once.
You can't.
You can't. You wouldn't do anything. So when you really look at what you need to do, I think you've got to do a body composition to start with so you really know your starting point. But then pick the thing. Maybe the first thing for you is you go, I've been sitting all the time. Your first thing's activity. Start there. Focus on one thing, nail it. We had that discussion last time where I said it took me 6 months to get meditation under my belt. 6 months. I didn't focus on anything else. I just worked on that. Right now, I had been working on doing steps. Now that the steps are solidly being, 10, 12,000 a day, I'm working on really kicking up my HIIT training. So I don't focus on improving multiple things at once because then I don't do anything.
You focus.
And one thing at a time.
The other beautiful thing about body composition, we had the oldest female ninja warrior on this podcast. I don't know if you've heard about her, but she would be great for your podcast. Her name is Ginny McConicle.
How old is she?
She is now mid 70s, I believe. Yeah, mid to late 70s. And her story was fantastic. She went in for routine checkup with her doctors, and they suspected some osteopenia. That was their first step before full-blown osteoporosis. And getting that, I don't think it was through a DEXA scan. I don't know exactly how they did it, but they found out that yes, she did have osteopenia. And again, if you do a DEXA scan, you're going to get a sense
you'll find it.
of your bone mineral
you'll get
density.
even better because they probably did a foot scan to see if she had osteoporosis or osteopenia, but like full body, DEXA is going to show it. It's just amazing to me that a ninja warrior would have.
Well, this is before. So this is before she was a ninja warrior, right? So that's the story.
Okay.
So she's just living her life. For her, being healthy was always about being skinny.
Yes.
There was not muscle.
Which is the opposite, actually, of being healthy when you think about it.
Exactly. And we're going to get to this concept too, but she always thought of, aging as let's be graceful instead of your idea of powerful. We're going to come back to that. So her daughter, when she found out that her mom had these results, said, Mom, you got to get serious about changing your life around. And I'm going to help you on that process.
Wow. How old was she?
She was in her late 60s when she got started, like late 60s.
This is so important for people to hear because what is very clear is that it is never too late.
It's never too late. And then she got serious. She started doing, first it was just, walking more, then some light weights, then some more bands. Then that leading into like full-blown resistance training at the gym. Getting more protein in was one of the first things that she did. She got serious about this. And then she went back not even a year later. I'll fact check this. We'll go back to the episode and see. But not even a year later or about a year later, I know it was something like that, she had reversed her osteopenia. So cool.
Which you can do. And it's really fantastic. And that's why you've got to catch it.
Yes.
But I'm amazed she caught it like she catches it in her 60s and was able to do it. It's so huge.
And that's just another reminder for everybody here. Yes, you can change your life and it's never too late, but it does get harder as you age and you suffer that whole entire time.
And that's so
try to catch it early.
Yeah, all those years of not having the energy, of not feeling like you could do those things. And the key takeaway, what you talked about there was she just started and built. And I think that's one of the challenges I see that people do as they age is they'll go, okay, I'm going to jump into this. Nope. That's why I say, let's change your fork. Then let's get you moving. Then let's add some intensity to the movement. Now let's start some body movement. Like let's just build and build and build. And you'll be blown away where you are in a year, but don't go like crazy rushing into some CrossFit class.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to sequentially build these steps up. Like you said, focus, nail that habit, have it be a part of your life. Sure, there's going to be ebbs and flows. You might get off for a day or two, but then you get back on track. And now this thing becomes a part of your lifestyle. It's just who you are. I mean, you've been working out since you were 16, but fitness, these other habits that you have, it's just who you are. You can't imagine life differently.
And for the person that I'm working with right now that has 200 pounds to lose, used to be an athlete, a major athlete. And so what we've done is just bring them back there. I go, we have the picture, we have them mentally there. And that's part of it too, is like future pacing yourself to go, what are the things that I want to be able to do? Because I think for so many of us, and I did this too, Drew, I'm kind of blown away when I started to think about it. I'd had all these goals of what I wanted to be able to do at 50, and I didn't reset. I didn't think, okay, now what I want to be able to do at 60, at 70, at 80. And I just went on autopilot, and I was autopiloting everything. And you're like, oh, this is good for me. And, if you look around at everybody else, you're like, oh, I'm doing fine. Who wants to do fine? Like, don't you want to be the best version of yourself at every age? So you can't look around at what society is saying, because then you're going to be average. And there's no reason to be average. What they're showing us about aging now, like there's, to me, two totally different schools of thought. And where I'm most concerned is that woman who's always tried to control her weight with diet. Because what the research shows is those people tend to be TOFI, thin outside, fat inside, right? And that they will tend to have poor muscle mass. They'll have sarcopenic obesity, so they don't have enough muscle. And they're so used to controlling by just doing more cardio and eating less, you're devastating your metabolism, devastating it. However, you can turn that all around by starting to move, add the intensity, add the body, add all the resistance training, and change it. And what's fun is rather than focusing on the scale, you're focusing on, I used to be able to do 1 pull-up, now I can do 6. I used to be able to do 10 air squats, now I'm doing air squats with weights. Now I'm jumping at the end of my squat. So the feedback you're getting is really, what am I able to do? Which is the whole point of this anyway. It's not a number on a scale. Why I worry about focus on body composition is I know that if I'm improving muscle and losing fat, it's meaning that I can do more everywhere. And
You're becoming
that's
more
the point.
powerful.
Right.
When it comes to weight loss, what percentage would you break down is diet and what percentage is the working out piece, specifically getting the right strength training?
So diet can make some initial big shifts and then it will leave you high and dry. Right. And, if you look at people who've tried to maintain their weight through diet alone, they are the ones that get skinny fat. So the big thing, the diet needs to be there, but in order to create long-term sustainable, appropriate body composition, it's the exercise. There's one other piece though. Like when I look at this and go, we need to totally improve your body composition. If I could only do 3 things, what would they be? It would be the diet shift. It would be resistance training and a little HIIT training and sleep. Because all bets are off. We could be eating protein first, getting the right amount of protein in the diet, doing the right amount of carbs and fat for you, doing your resistance training, adding a little HIIT, and you're not sleeping well, it's not going to work.
It's going to mess you up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're
Big
not gonna
time.
So let's just recap those. So diet, you put that first?
So to start with, and here's why.
Yeah.
We need a win, right? Like, I've worked in this field for 40 years, and it is really hard to tell someone, hey, you know what, we're going to do this. And in 6 months, you're going to see this. They're like, but I want to I'll just go do Jenny Craig because they say I can lose this in this amount of time. I mean, when I wrote The Virgin Diet, the tagline was drop 7 foods, lose 7 pounds, just 7 days, which the reality is you do the Virgin Diet, all those processed foods are out. So it's this quick shift that gives people so much of a win that they're in. We know in weight loss that faster weight loss gets people emotionally in the game, and then they tend to have better results.
They're more likely to stick to the diet. They're more likely to feel like I'm committed to this process.
Yeah. So personally, I like to start, and I like to do one thing at a time, because if you give people too many things, they do nothing.
Yeah.
Right? So my first thing is, if all you started with was to start tracking, and I work with a couple clients now, and we actually are doing this with groups. If you won't track, I will not work with you. Won't do it.
I feel like we need to just take a moment to talk about tracking, because that in itself feels so intimidating for people. And yet it's so powerful when you do it initially, because you actually go back to this core idea you shared earlier, which is that most of us are underestimating our calories, not to mention underestimating our protein intake by, some high percentage, right? You said 40% on the calories, and I don't know what it is with protein, but we know that people are underestimating that too. So let's talk about tracking, right? Some people feel like it's intimidating. Remind us again why it's so key, and then what is the best way to go about it? Like, what are some of the tips that are there to actually make it part of your life, but for somebody to feel like, oh, my life is not consumed by tracking.
Right. And this is not you're going to track for the rest of your life.
So that in itself already should give people some ease.
Right. And with anything I do, I go, why don't we just do this for a week? Or let's just do this for 21 days. Can we agree we could do anything for 21 days? We've had to track other things, so it's not like this is out of the ballpark. We're just going to start with this. Just let's do it for a week and see. And the research is so clear that people who track are able to maintain their weight better. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, just that. So for me with tracking, the first thing I like people to do is just track. Don't make a change. Just track. And let's track for a week and let's see where you average land. How many calories are you average eating a day? How many protein grams are you eating per day and at each meal? How much fat? How much carbs? How much fiber? That's it. Let's just track. Let's just check it out.
And do you have a best app or thing? Obviously now we have so many great technologies. Back in the day, people used to have used like workbooks and a little calculator.
So when I first started this, I made people write this all down. And then finally they were like emailing it to me, texting it to me. I was like, I don't care how you do it. You just must send it to me because I want to make sure you're actually tracking it and measuring it. It's so much easier now. So there's two that I love. I love Lane Norton's Carbon app. And I also love this is a free one. It's Chronometer.
Chronometer.
Yeah. It's so easy. It's free.
Yeah.
So
And I don't know about Chronometer, but like, can you like scan a barcode? So typically like if you get eggs or this,
yes,
you can
and then
scan
it remembers. It
and
learns your
remembers.
stuff.
And
So
generally most people are eating, minus eating out, they're generally eating the same meals. You know,
yes,
they probably have like 13, maybe 20 go-to meals that they're making on a regular basis. So
right.
once you get them in, you're just pulling that same
Right.
meal up or that same food up.
It is a pain to start, and then it gets very easy. And it's also can be a challenge when you're eating out, but it's so mission critical because now all of a sudden you are actually asking the questions that I always teach people to ask that they don't ask. You're really ordering how much protein is in that dish, right? So you can do it and it will change your behavior so quickly. So that's why just like week 1, you don't have to change anything. All you need to do is track. Just by tracking, guess what will happen? You will start to change your behavior like, oh my gosh. Because it also will make you think if you are going to grab that extra keto cookie. Because it all counts. Too much healthy food's unhealthy. And I'd argue with a lot of the stuff out there. It's amazing after the virgin diet, I had to field so many questions of all this gluten-free junk food. And then keto had a resurgence and now there's all this keto junk food. It's like, for the most part, the closer we can get to nature, we're going to be better off. So the first thing you do is start with tracking. And I had a great nutrition mentor early on, and he said, we need to add before we take away. And so the second thing that you do is that you ensure that you are getting optimal protein. Women especially are nowhere close to where they need to be. Now, a lot of that is because our RDA is really just ridiculous. And I know that there is a push to get it changed, but that'll probably happen in 30, 40 years after so many people have died of frailty. So what I use is I created a protein calculator, and it's basically 0.7 grams to 1 gram per pound of target body weight. I was doing it based on lean body mass, and I went, I'm just setting up a problem here for people, so we'll just do it this way. I'd rather people err on the higher side than the lower side, and then I really focus on bumper meals because the first meal of the day, that's when you are stopping that muscle protein breakdown. You've got to start to trigger muscle protein synthesis. So 30 grams is sort of the low end. I get 50 grams every morning. That's my focal point, is to get that. And I travel with stuff just in case we're stuck,
So take that formula that you had for target protein, and if you don't mind, use somebody's fictitious weight or your weight, or just walk us through that example of what you're shooting for on a regular basis. And obviously you have your hacks, and we'll get back to that 30 to 50. You have 50, you recommend 30, but walk us through that. What is somebody shooting for?
Well, just like a 120-pound woman. So here's the thing that we know is as you age, you need more, not less. Right? We have anabolic resistance. We're not able to do muscle protein synthesis as well as we used to. If you're vegan or vegetarian, you likely need more, not less, because you don't have the essential amino acids and protein digestibility that you would if you ate animal protein. So, and as we age, we have lower stomach acid. Likely you need protein digestive enzymes too. So the reality is, if you're not working out, you need more, not less, which is such a counterintuitive thing. You'd think, oh, I'm working out, I'll need more, but you actually need less because you've got just some of the triggers for building muscle from just the resistance training. But I would rather err on the high side of 1 gram per pound of target body weight. If you're under a lot of stress or having surgery, I'd go up from that. Like when my son had surgery, I had him on 2 to 3 grams per target body weight, obviously using a lot of supplementation. So 120-pound woman, that would be with 30 grams minimum at a meal, with the beginning and ending meal most important. That's really 40 grams at each meal, but she could go higher. She could go 50 at the morning and evening and a little lower at lunch. The evening's important too, because overnight you're going to go into muscle protein breakdown again. So let's reduce that as much as possible.
Yeah. So just to tease out a few things that are there. So number one, for your clients that you've worked with, and obviously you've written books and sold, a bazillion copies, and, have different programs that people have gone through. When people start and it comes to the topic of protein, I have the experience of having kind of shared that with my sisters and podcast guests that have come on and have talked about the power of protein, just like you. A lot of women feel like, whoa, I'm not eating anywhere near to that amount. What do you find for your average woman that's out there, let's maybe go a little bit higher in weight. 120 might be a little bit lower than the average weight of a lot of the women that might be out there that are 40 plus. Let's say somebody's like 160, 150, right? And they are trying to eat healthy and they feel like they're shopping at Trader Joe's and Whole Foods and other things like that, but they've never tracked before, so they don't know where their calories are coming from. If their target body weight is, let's say 130, right? Or even 140, they want to drop 10 pounds, right? Depending on their height and everything like that. What are you often finding is actually the amount of protein that they're eating. If the goal is, let's say 130, because you're asking them to eat a gram per target weight that's there, right? What do you often find is the spectrum of what people are eating if they're not tracking.
Well, if they're not paying attention to it, they're nowhere close. Now, fortunately,
maybe they're eating like
probably
half?
about half. Like in my world, I have for over a decade taught people to break their fast with a loaded protein smoothie. And done correctly, that loaded protein smoothie minimally would have 30 grams of protein, but can have as much as 50 grams of protein. You can just spike that thing, right? You can use, I love Good Karma flax milk because it's got some extra pea protein in it. You can add some extra collagen, not a complete protein, but still it will give you some protein grams. You can use your protein powder. So it is pretty easy to get it in that way. But for the average person who might be having their little like muffin for
avocado
breakfast.
Toast.
Their avocado toast. And they have a poached egg. And that poached egg gave them 6 grams of protein.
Right.
It's
and then let's say avocado
near.
has a little bit of protein, but not much.
I mean, maybe they got 10 grams from all of that.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, the avocado and the toast, that's not high quality protein. Right? You're not getting all of your essential amino acids there.
You're not going to take that to the bank.
Yeah, you're not going to get that leucine level you need to trigger muscle protein synthesis. So that's why I say the first step is track. Then the second step is let's just focus on protein. And here's what's cool. What's bizarro is the food guide pyramid that became the My Plate was like a science experiment. No people group in history had ever eaten the way that the food guide pyramid had put together. And in fact, it is so obesogenic, it's ridiculous. Like if you look at what makes people gain fat, it's a low protein, high carb, high fat diet. Like the single thing we know is don't eat high carb, high fat. And that's what that pyramid was, right? And we know too that if all you did was increase protein to even 20%, 18%, but let's say you took it to 20 to 25%, first you have the thermic effect of food. And when you look at our metabolism, we have our resting metabolic rate. We have what we do throughout the day, the NEAT, that we all need to be doing more of. We should be standing up right now. So standing rather than sitting, walking farther away from the car, like park it far away instead of trying to find the closest spot. All that stuff counts, fidgeting, etc. And that accounts for a lot more than exercise. Exercise like 5%. Everyone's like, I did the exercise and I got my calorie burn on the treadmill. I'm like, it didn't subtract out your resting metabolic rate. That's not really your calorie burn. And so you have exercise, you have basal metabolic rate, you have your NEAT, and then you have the thermic effect of food. Now, fat's nothing. Carbohydrates like 10 to 15%, protein 20 to 30% because it has to go through and do the muscle protein turnover. So think about if all you did was push up your protein, which is going to be more satiating, it's going to have better blood sugar control, and it's going to have the thermic effect. You're going to crowd out the other stuff. That's why the whole thing, my mantra is eat protein first. Get your plate, flip it around. Don't eat that baked potato yet. Start with the steak, start with the wild salmon. Eat all of that first.
Get the protein in first.
Yeah, because then you know you got it, but also you're going to get full. Mm-hmm. Have you heard of that protein leverage hypothesis?
No, talk about it.
Oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing these bug researchers discovered. And what they discovered with bugs and then with animals, and then like I discovered this just going to a vegan restaurant. So I'm sure you'll relate to this being a recovering vegetarian, is that when you sit down to eat and it's a low protein meal, you will overeat in order to get enough protein in. And once you hear that, because I had a girlfriend in LA who was like a total vegan, so I'd always go to this high-end gourmet vegan restaurant. And I was like, I felt like I needed to put like a roast in my purse. I was like, I was always hungry. I was like, just ate so much food at this restaurant, and I'm still not satisfied. And that is that protein leverage hypothesis. So what would happen if we flipped that script and we just said, eat protein first? Make sure you get that in. Know how much you need. So, this morning we were at a hotel. Tim just discovered he was egg, dairy, and gluten intolerant. I actually had to test him. I was like, just do the virgin diet. But I actually tested him. And the funny thing is we were on a cruise when he got the results. He's like, I'm not on the cruise. Nothing counts. I'm like, right, dude. Anyway, so he ate the steak of steak and eggs. I took his eggs and a bunch of egg whites so I could get enough protein grams in, right? And a little bit of bacon, and counted it up. Used my app to make sure I was where I needed to be. Mm-hmm. So this is all doable. But again, you have to teach yourself so you know what it is.
Yeah. And anything you do new for the first time, it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
People learn driving for the first time. It's tough. You feel like you have to pay attention to all these knobs, all these things, especially if it's a manual. So there is going to be a little bit of a learning curve, but the question is always, it's not, is this hard? It's, is this worth it? And when I think about it, there's so many people, and unfortunately, I feel like women are a huge percentage of this because so much of our media culture targets and preys upon women. The magazines that are out there, they used to be on one extreme. Now they're on a different extreme. Maybe we'll talk about that in a second. But there's so much that preys upon women and the societal standards. And yes, we want to be healthy, but there's a lot of people that want to sell to women. And so they end up going on these up and down constant roller coasters that just stress them out.
It drives me nuts. Literally the message I have is the message I've been talking about for 40 years. And it just breaks my heart to see what is being sold to women. And honestly, it's because we are the healthcare CEOs as a family, right?
Sure.
Like we're the ones reading the diet books. We're the ones listening to the health podcasts for the most part. And then we're bringing it home and taking it to our spouse, our partner, et cetera. And I'm really pushing this message out now, but it really needs to start when we are in our teens. I was fortunate to be a massive athlete in my teens, working out with the football team because we had no gyms back then. The gyms were like for the football guys, right? But when I used to take women to Gold's Gym in Venice, and I did this as a field trip back when I was a trainer, they were so afraid of getting big.
Right.
So afraid of getting big.
My grandmother used to tell that to my sister, like, don't work out, you're going to get big. And meanwhile, I'm over here, I'm like, when is that going to happen to me?
Yeah.
Like, how easy is it to get big? It's actually really difficult to get big.
So I've trained, I don't know how many people over the years. I've never once seen a woman without steroids get big. Never. Never once. Not possible. And in fact, Miriam Nelson from Tufts wrote this book. I think it was like Strong Women Don't Get Fat or something like that. And what she showed is as women put muscle on, they got smaller. Not bigger.
Leaned out.
It's your metabolic Spanx. It holds everything in tighter. And this is where you're going to burn your fat. This is how you're going to improve your metabolism. And so that little Pilates class, it's a great adjunct, but it's not going to cut it. You are not going to build muscle in Pilates or yoga. You have to do things that literally you get to a point of close to failure. And no, you're not going to get big doing that. And you know what's the coolest thing is if in the wildest chance you did, you'd stop and back it off, right? So it's not like overnight you wake up and you go, I'm Popeye. No, this is never happening.
If it was that easy, all these men would be out there ripped, right? But they're not. It's actually really difficult.
Right. And we are very similar. Like everyone thinks, oh, it's much different, training a woman. It really isn't. It's not. It's not that different. Like we basically can build muscle the same. So not a big difference here. So it is hard for us to get big in our wildest dreams. So that's what it's like. Women lift heavy in good form. And that's why I always say, how much should I lift? I go, get your form, get your technique dialed. That's the most important thing. And then lift as much as you possibly can in good form. And when you think you can't lift another one, do that because you can.
So where we are, we were talking about diet and that being the biggest thing because you get some quick wins.
Yes.
And you also understand your baseline. And just by tracking your baseline, you're in a place where you're naturally going to start making better decisions. To do that, it's better and it's going to be easier and more sustainable if you use some sort of app. And we'll list some of the ones you mentioned inside of the show notes.
You have to use an app. Like,
you got to use an app.
20 years ago, I was like, write it on a journal page,
Yeah.
No, use an app. It's so easy. It learns for you. It will blow your mind. It's the single most effective thing for improving your diet is just tracking. It's
So
simple. And
track
again, track first. Just 1 week. Just check things out. Be curious. Go, what am I really doing? And what are you looking at? You're going to look at overall calories for the day so you get a sense of what does your body need. Because we naturally will do a maintenance thing. We eat a little more one day, we eat a little less the next day. Just kind of see where your average is, right? Next, as you're tracking that, you're going to look how many protein grams am I eating per meal and overall? How much fat am I eating? Where's that fat coming from? Right? Is that coming from omega-6s? Is omega-3s? Like, where's the fat coming from? It's great if you go that granular, but you don't have to. The one I really want to see is carbs and fiber, because there's a big difference between having 130 grams of carbs and no fiber versus 130 grams of carbs and 30 to 50 grams of fiber. So fiber should be a macronutrient.
Yeah. What's your target? What do you want people to hit for? Obviously, it might take them time if they're not eating a lot. I think the average American is getting less than 15 grams of fiber a day or like 10 grams of fiber a day.
Yeah, I think that it's somewhere in there. And I've learned my lesson. Unfortunately, I learned my lesson with my dad when I upped his fiber too fast. Oops. So you increase your fiber over time, not
Slowly.
overnight, with water. And the other one that you've got to track is hydration. Because if you're dehydrated, you actually will store fat, not burn it, which is a crazy thing. And it takes minimal amount of dehydration, like 1% to start to raise stress hormones. Your body actually takes glycogen from your liver, frees it, turns it into fructose, and stores it as fat so that you, like the camel, can make it out into the desert and be able to break down that fat and get water.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
when people see camels and they're in the desert,
yes, don't be a camel. Don't be a camel.
Fat that's in the hump that allows them to live for a long time without actually drinking water. No different than like bears putting on fat before they go into hibernation. We've had Dr. Richard Johnson on the podcast.
I love him so much. I totally did an embarrassing fangirl over him.
Oh, yeah? What'd you do?
Well, just because I think he is just a treasure. And just that information on fructose, when I was writing the Sugar Impact Diet, he was my man.
Yeah.
Like, it's such great information because in the Sugar Impact Diet, I go, we've been looking at this all wrong.
Yeah.
But there tend to be either it's all fructose or it's all sugar or it's all carbs. I'm like, what if we just looked at all of this and went, fructose, insulin and glycemic index versus fiber and nutrients? And not make either make carb the villain, fructose the villain.
Yeah,
sugar
I think we're getting out of villainization.
Right.
We're realizing that you can have a broader diet and it's all about how to make it fit in a way that people can follow it and that they only have to focus on a few core things. And then great, if they want to go crazy every so often, that's fine. But that's a lot easier to do when you have that baseline and that consistency that's there.
Well, and the good news is, when you're eating protein first, okay, so there's a cake coming out for dessert. You'll have a little bit of it, but you probably will be too full to do much more.
Right.
And life involves cake.
Right.
People always go, what do I do about my birthday? I go, have cake. If you like cake or pie, your birthday is not the issue. It's not, in order to have a sustainable plan, you're going to have these things that come up. They're fine. You just learn how to deal with them. But in the tracking, again, the next thing you just look at is protein and making sure you're getting enough. After that, the next thing I look at is getting in 5 to 10 servings of non-starchy vegetables a day.
Yeah. Which are examples?
It's all the stuff that you probably aren't eating. You look at vegetables, and apparently if we took out French fries and ketchup, Americans would eat no vegetables.
Yeah.
And I'd probably add in a little iceberg lettuce. Yeah. And corn is not a vegetable.
Right.
Corn's a grain. So it is the broccoli, cauliflower, peppers, onions, mushrooms. Mushrooms, I'm like an obsessed person with mushrooms. Had them this morning in my eggs. So it's all of the non-starchies, and it is really getting that diversity. I don't know if you've had Deanna Minnick on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm
I love her.
Big Deanna fan, and getting that diversity. I mean, she talks about 50 different ones a week, and I'm like, 50? She goes, spices count. I'm like, okay, there's a chance here. But just, we get into such food ruts. And this is where literally frozen vegetables can save the day, and frozen fruit. Because frozen vegetables peaked at the height of harvest, and frozen, you can have your cauliflower rice, broccoli rice, all sorts of different things that maybe you wouldn't get, mushrooms, etc. So we really work on getting in a diversity of different vegetables and salads. And so 5 is my baseline, and that's a half a cup cooked or a cup raw, and really tends the goal. So protein. And with protein generally comes some healthy fats. That's why it's really important that you are what you ate, right? Because that will change both the amino acid and the fatty acid profile. But if you're eating grass-fed finished beef, you're eating wild fish, you're getting good omega-3s, some CLA from the beef there. So you count some fat in with the protein. Then you do your non-starchies, likely use some extra virgin olive oil there or something, count that fat in. Then you add in 2 fruits a day. And those, again, big diversity, but I loved berries. And then after that is your decision with fat and carbs. But I find quite often when you do that much and you've used some fat in the preps on the other things, like some ghee or some extra virgin olive oil, you're pretty close to done.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's like they're so satiating that you don't really even feel like you have a lot of room. When people start to track and they prioritize protein and they're getting in those vegetables, they're getting in that fiber, those non-starchy vegetables, they start to generally just feel more full.
Right.
Versus being on the high carb, high fat, which you end up, in particular about the carbs, you're on this blood sugar roller coaster. And even if you're sticking at your calories, the sort of snack well or the Weight Watchers approach from back in the day, which is eat anything, it's just, well, I think Weight Watchers changed it a little bit.
But it was back then. It was just, count the points.
Count the points, what it is. Well, those foods are going to generally make you crave other foods. And your blood sugar, we've done a bunch of episodes on that topic. It's going to drive you nuts and you're not going to have focus. You're going to feel crazy and you're going to constantly feel like you have to keep a bunch of carbohydrates and snacks and Skittles and other stuff in your pocket or extra caffeine just to make it through the day.
So early on, when I was first in graduate school, I was training clients at the Pritikin Center in the Pacific Palisades. The Pritikin Center was vegetarian, although they did fish twice a week at 2 meals. People would come live there, and it was 10% calories from fat. It was a very high carbohydrate diet, low protein, probably 10% from protein, high carb. Now, I'm one of those people that goes all in with something, and I'm like, I will try this. I was literally living on bagels, fat-free cream cheese, pasta, potatoes, and skim milk lattes. And I had to eat every 1 to 2 hours. And I was literally hypoglycemic. And I remember I did a body composition test. We were doing this at USC when I was at their PhD program. We were calibrating all the different body composition tests. And I came out at 25%.
Wow.
Now, 25% for me is just like, I never sit there. And I was doing loads of cardio and eating, because that was Pritikin, loads of cardio, super, super low fat, low protein. And I went, nope, because I just was like, let's test it and see. I was like, wow, did that damage my metabolism quickly.
I want to take a pause from this sort of stack that you've been building up, which has been fantastic. There's so many practical tips that you've been outlining, and I know we still have some more to get to. I want to go to the topic of Ozempic, right? And I want your thoughts on it because I'm seeing more and more telemedicine emerge, these sort of startups emerge, and a lot of people who feel like they've been struggling with weight for so long that they are seeing their friends that are out there and they're losing, especially where I live over here, where you used to live. I'm in Los Angeles and Brentwood and the Palisades and Santa Monica. And there's a lot of individuals that are on this. I was at a fundraiser this weekend and you could tell that there was probably a lot of people that were on Ozempic that were there. Talk a little bit about this. I'm sure you've been following it very closely. And, what are your thoughts on the situation?
My answer is probably not what you think it is.
No, I actually have a feeling that you're going to give a more nuanced answer, which is why I asked you.
So when I was on the Dr. Phil show, he had a chapter in his book called Weight Loss Resistance. And I thought that is such an interesting thing. And this was 20 plus years ago. It was 2007. And I thought, weight loss resistance, what could get in the way of you losing weight and cause you to gain weight? And I started digging in, past looking at diet and exercise. What else is there? Well, there's thyroid, there's insulin resistance, there's toxicity. At the time, we didn't know that there was all this gut microbiome stuff and food sensitivity stuff. That's how that whole book came out of that. And genetics, obviously. And so I got all of these different factors, and I was teaching a course to doctors all around the country, really working on this. And working with people who are weight loss resistant for whatever reason. And there's so many different things, sleep, stress, right? And so when this Ozempic came out, people need a little win, right? And this drug, there's also, if you start to dig into this drug, I was at Integrative Healthcare Symposium where I actually did this cool thing with Mark this year. And they had a guy talk about this. And he started talking about the other effects beyond weight loss and the neuroregeneration and heart and kidney. I put my son Grant on this. So my son Grant now is cycling it for the neuroregeneration. So I've been looking at this, and I'm actually working with one of my doctor friends in Tampa, and we put together a program. My next book actually is the perfect program for Ozempic, for Mounjaro, for any of these things. Here's the problem with the drugs. As I started to do the research, they are getting the drug and they aren't getting the only way you should be able to get this drug is if you absolutely must track your food, eat protein first, get in your protein amounts, and do resistance training. And if you will not do that, you cannot have the drug. And the other thing that has to happen is that you have to monitor your fat-free mass and make sure that you are maintaining your skeletal muscle mass. Now, like 10% would be the least amount, the most that you could possibly lose of skeletal muscle that you are losing from fat. The scary thing with this is that if you look at the diets online for this, they are basically low calorie, low fat, low protein diets. They're eat little amounts. It's almost like a bariatric surgery diet. They're giving them really nothing, and they're not recommending resistance training. And now we're seeing this devastating impact to the metabolism. People are saying they can never go off it. Well, true. If you devastate your metabolism, because you have to heal your metabolism to be able to lose fat and have a great metabolic rate. If you are devastating it by losing muscle, you have a major problem. So while these drugs could be the best thing ever because we have now 80% overweight and obese.
Yeah, and we're not going to just fix it by teaching everybody how to cook. Even though
Haven't
that's a
fixed it
beautiful
yet.
dream.
More information than ever out there, and we haven't fixed it yet. Now, for a lot of reasons, we've gone after the wrong targets. Like just the description of diets alone and the way we put people on a diet where it's this, we're lowering calories and we're giving them this ultra-processed food that makes them hungry is just mean. And it doesn't work. It's ineffective. So if you could give them something that's going to now all of a sudden improve insulin, improve their satiety, and give them take the edge off a little bit while you're having them track, increase their protein, add resistance training, could be amazing. But it's not being done that way. And that's the big challenge.
What about any kind of concerns that are bubbling up about any kind of long-term health damage?
But again, the long-term health damage, these drugs have been around for a decade for diabetes. The long-term health damage, what's the big health damage for long-term obesity?
Yeah, it's huge.
Most
people are getting all these chronic diseases because they're diabetic, they're obese. So you're just saying we have to weigh the pros and cons.
Well, so you look, risk reward on everything in life. The risk here is really about your muscle mass.
Yeah.
It could easily not be an issue. I'm literally building the program. We're doing the trial group right now on this to prove that you can do this and not lose muscle.
Right. So we don't need to demonize it. We do need some tools to tackle this sort of obesity epidemic, but it can't be this idea that you just take a medication and it's a free lunch because you're going to end up sacrificing all these other things. And we have a whole sort of maybe decade of a lot of women and some men too, they're going to be extremely frail, not strong, not to mention potentially they'll be skinny, but they'll be diabetic.
Right.
Right. Because they're eating a lot of foods that are, not supporting their overall body, maybe extra carbs, extra other things, even if their calories are lower.
So it's like any other type of weight loss diet. I mean, we could go back to The Biggest Loser and go look at the metabolic adaptation that happened there, and they were exercising like fiends and still exercising. It's going to be the same devastating metabolic adaptation effect. That's why, how would you use this correctly? You're frustrated. You haven't been able to lose weight. Your thyroid's working well. I always say, is your thyroid really working well? And I'm sure you've had a lot of thyroid experts on here. Your thyroid really has to be working well. You're sleeping well. You've managed your stress. You still are a little insulin resistant. So that's probably one of the big issues. You're doing your exercise, you're eating, but you just need something to help you get started. Mm-hmm. And you are committed to making sure you're going to eat your protein first, and you're going to eat the amounts that are right for your target body weight. You are committed to doing resistance training 3 days a week, walking after meals. We all need to move so much more than we're moving. Holy smokes. Doing a little HIIT training for that visceral adipose tissue. You're going to do all of that stuff, but you're going to use this as a little helper. Mm-hmm. I think that we have got a crisis. We've got to do something. Now, when I was on Dr. Phil, we tried to take on the teens, because it was like, if you're an overweight teen, the chance you'll be an overweight adult is like 70%. But the challenge was the parents. So we were like, chicken egg, what do we do here? Like, we would help the teens, but the parents would sabotage the teens. We'd help the parents. And then, it's like, so I think that this done correctly is a huge opportunity. The other opportunity that's great with all of this is that we can talk about weight loss again, because we couldn't talk about it for a while. And, I know this is unpopular, what I'm about to say.
It may not be with our audience, but jump into it.
All right, but I'm going to go there. It is absolutely inappropriate to tell people they can be healthy at any size. You should love yourself at any size. And then you should love yourself enough to say, I want to be my healthiest, best self, whatever that is for me. And, we cannot tell someone if you're 100 pounds overweight that you can be healthy, because that's a lie. It's a flat out lie. And it's doing them a massive disservice.
Yeah. Where do you think that all that came from? Just like big picture, you've been in this industry for a long time. You've seen all the different trends and the ups and downs, right? Was that a reaction to, not to demonize anybody, but like Vogue and these different magazines putting the super skinny models on there, and sort of a lot of that was going on in the 90s and the early 2000s, that's the vision of beauty?
That started in the 60s with Twiggy. Like, that's been going on forever.
I was born in 82, so, I only have my own reference range.
That was I wasn't around then either, but it was Twiggy in the 60s, I think, really started a lot of that. And they've been using these crazy skinny models ever since. In fact, I've had this bizarro career. Part of my career, I was living in Fort Lauderdale, and I would go to South Beach, and I did nutrition for the models down there. And they did not want to put any muscle. They needed to be super skinny. And I look at them now and I go, these are women who've devastated their metabolisms, right? If you look at what happened, especially over the pandemic, I remember hearing a statistic that by the year 2030, that we were going to be 100% diabetic. And I go, that is ridiculous. And then you look at what happened over the pandemic and how we went into the pandemic. 12% of the population was metabolically healthy, came out of it 6.8%. And the obesity statistics that have been on the rise since the 80s, that are now the overweight and obesity is nearly 80%. And I think we had to make being over fat, not overweight, over fat okay, because it's more normal than being.
It's more normal than ever.
It's more, well, if you look out around, go anywhere, go to Disneyland, go to a mall, go whatever, the thin people are the not normals.
Right.
Right? The normal weight person's the not normal. So we just made it okay. But that's not helping anyone.
Sure. Maybe also a little bit of like the politically correct language. Let's create safe spaces for everybody.
Well, and let's do that. Like, let's not demonize someone because they're struggling with their weight. I can pretty much guarantee you, since I've worked in this field for 40 years, that no one is sitting there going, I feel great about being over fat. What I really want to communicate is feel good about yourself. You're doing everything you can. They're frustrated. What I learned over the years working with so many people who are over fat is that they knew more about it. They were trying harder
It's on their mind all the time.
all the time.
If you have a friend or a family member or somebody that's close to you, or maybe that's even that person is you. I never dealt with that myself. I was always a skinny Indian vegetarian kid. So I had my own challenges over there. But it is literally on your mind all the time. Anytime you get dressed in the morning, anytime you go in the mirror, anytime you walk into a room, people constantly have that narrative of, are people looking at me? Are they going to like me? Do they think I'm too fat? That's just a constant thing. So they don't want to be that way, right? And they haven't been given the right tools and information, kind of been lied to a little bit by the narrative that's
kind of been lied
there.
to. Like, you look at what we've done over the last 30 years, telling people to eat. No, you need to cut the fat out. All you need to do is go fat free. No, you need to eat pretty much only fat. No, like, you look at it and go, should I be fat free? If you look at all of the traditional diets out there, it's carbs are fat, carbs are fat, carbs are fat. And they miss the most important one and just go, well, what if you just focused on your protein? And then it was like extras, do loads and loads and loads and loads of cardio. We've devastated people. That can make you lose your muscle and raise stress hormones and make you hungrier for carbs. We know that when you do chronic endurance training. It burns up muscle, raises stress hormones, makes you hungrier. And then you're not supposed to eat because you're on a diet. Like, it's just a horrible situation that we've done over the years. Here's the reality. And I think of Brian Johnson, who, when you look at all the money he spends, this $2 million a year for this longevity, the end game is, he goes, the things that really move the needle are free. And if you look at all the change that has to happen, it's the Mahatma Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world. The reality is, if all you did was start moving more and you improved your diet, which, by the way, doesn't have to cost a lot of money. It's way easier now with all of Costco's got organic food. So you improve your diet, you get moving, you focus on your sleep, you drink pure water. A lot of these things are not the costly things. They're not the entitled privilege things. They're free or not much, right? It's a lateral shift. If we did that, no one would buy big food. Big food wouldn't be there. If we did that stuff, we wouldn't really need the big pharma because we'd improve our whole metabolic health, right? We wouldn't be using insurance for anything but catastrophic. So we actually have a lot of power in the day-to-day decisions that we do would change everything. But I think you get to such a point where you're so overwhelmed with your health that it feels daunting. And that's why I always say, let's just start with, could we just eat more protein? Could we just move more? Could we just focus on drinking more? Like, just one at a time, step by step, everything builds on self. And if you're tracking, you start to see these little improvements, because some of it could be like watching grass grow. You try to put on muscle, it's like watching grass grow. That's why you just little improvements. I used to be able to do push-ups on my knees. Now I can get on my toes. I used to huff and puff getting up the stairs. Now I can go up and down and up, and like, every little thing matters. And all of a sudden we'd look and go, what happened to big food? No one's supporting them. But it could be that grassroots, because a lot of this stuff really it's not expensive. And it's really not time consuming.
It just takes a little bit of a mindset shift to get into it. So on that note, let's pull on some threads of some more practical aspects related to some of the things we covered in the beginning. So on the tracking side, what is your recommendation for people, especially because one of the first things you want people to do is increase and eat their protein first, right? Audit their protein, eat their protein first. Most people are not consuming enough protein. How are you recommending for your clients and the people that follow you of tracking that throughout the day?
I like the Chronometer app. It's free.
That's what I use.
Like, these things, there's so many of these things that are free, and everyone pretty much has a phone nowadays. So Chronometer app and a food scale, not free, $10. Use that. You won't need to do this forever, but it is such an eye opener. So that's the first thing. And I find that even if you didn't make any recommendations beyond just eat protein first and get enough, that people improve their diet. And that's actually what the research shows. People who eat protein first make better food choices overall. Now, obviously, next step for me is upgrading your plate with more non-starchy vegetables, a little bit of fruit. But That's the one. Chronometer, super easy to do.
And for people that are just not familiar with this, again, this is an app. You can get it on all the different phones that are on there. It's on the App Store, on the Google Android Store, whatever other kind of phone you use. You're going to download it. They'll ask you some basic questions to, set up your profile, your gender, your weight, your height, etc. If you know your target calories, if you don't, that's okay. You can kind of skip it. And then you can start by entering things in. And a lot of the things that we all consume on a repetitive basis, like people are pretty much eating the same diet on a regular basis. When you scan the barcode of those things, a lot of them are already built into the database.
And hopefully you're not using barcodes that much.
Right. But if you have like a protein shake,
but it becomes
or something,
it does. I'm giving you a little teasing, but your Greek style yogurt has a barcode. So it's very easy because then you just favorite the things you eat every day. Like I've got my blueberries and my blackberries and my chicken breast and all those things that are just common for me are just in there.
Right. But the key is like, let's say Greek yogurt, right? You're going to have a serving of that. In the beginning, you got to weigh it. So you put your bowl on the food, you zero out the scale, and now you're adding what you think is a serving, but then you look at the scale to make sure it's actually a serving. Because if you're eating more than a serving, unless you're intending to eat more than a serving, you got to make sure you appropriately track that inside of there. So you're going to write in there, how much did you actually consume? And as somebody who, years ago when I did this for the first time, I was even blown away by how many things I did not have the correct understanding of, especially, there's a lot of really great tasting things that have higher amounts of fat calories in them. And when I was going through a cut phase of working with my trainer, I didn't realize that my, single pour of Primal Kitchen salad dressing, which I love,
was like 4 servings.
Was like 2.5 servings.
Yes.
Right. I'm working on this right now with a friend and he's just shocked.
Right.
Because for years he said, I just don't think this is working. I think that the type of training that I'm doing is making me gain weight. I need to do more of this type of training that's there. And I was like, let's actually together for just a couple of days. I'm not training this. I don't know this, but I did this myself. Let me help you. Let's actually track your calories. I'll support you. I'll check in with you. If you don't have a food scale that day or you're traveling, text me. I'll just kind of get a general idea. I'll help you enter into the app. And he was blown away. He was consuming 30% more calories each day than what he thought he was consuming.
And that is completely typical. It's again, we underestimate, and that includes like dietitians, what we eat by anywhere from 25 to 40%. It's completely typical. And it is, you see, it's the fat. It's the fat that's so easy to add up. And I think I look at all diets as tools, right? Whether it's keto, carnivore, vegan, they all can be actually helpful. Maybe not for the long term, for the short term. But I think somehow it seems like every couple years something gets the green light and something gets the red light. And keto made us all think, oh, you can eat as much fat as you want. No, you cannot. You cannot. It will add up. And if you too many calories, too much healthy food, even if it's olive oil, is unhealthy. And it's got to go somewhere. And fat, if you're eating too much fat, it's going to be stored as fat. Super easy. Doesn't take anything for your body to incorporate it in as fat. So one of the easiest things to do is to really start to monitor that. Because for a lot of people listening, they probably have already been careful with their sugar and their refined carbohydrates, but it's really easy to overload it on things like olive oil.
It's so true. One of your most popular reels that you did recently, and this would be a great thing to end on because people love the visual, they get the understanding, they're trying to imagine. You went through and you said, how I get 100 plus grams of protein, whatever your target amount is. What's your target amount in your case that you try to hit every day?
I will tell you, I eat a lot of protein. So I weigh 142 and I generally target about 150 grams of protein, but I often get 180 grams of protein.
Yeah.
But I've always been that person who feels better eating more protein.
Totally.
So it just is the way my diet is.
Yeah. And people hear those numbers. When I heard those numbers, when my trainer said, I want you to eat 165 grams of protein every day, and that's what I'm shooting for initially, especially somebody who grew up vegetarian. I'm not vegetarian now, and I haven't been since I was in my early 20s. I'm like, oh, okay, it's a
well, as a
mindset shift.
vegetarian, I mean, you'd be eating so many calories to get there unless you're using. But I think protein powders are such a great tool.
No, they're super helpful,
especially for a vegetarian or vegan.
So walk us through your daily routine, right? You talked a little bit about your morning. Just recap that a little bit.
Okay.
Give us a showcase of how are you getting that much protein. I think it's super helpful, especially for a lot of the women. Again, not to make this about men or women, but I most often hear, and most of the questions that I see on YouTube and that are emailed in is often from women who are saying, I just cannot imagine eating that much protein. So you do it. Show us how you do it.
Yeah, and it's not that hard. So I'm traveling right now. At home, I'll do a smoothie. It's easy. If I'm traveling, it's either an egg and egg white omelet, or it is and literally I'll be like, give me 2 to 3 eggs, 6 egg whites. So normally they'll have an egg white omelet on the menu, and I say, just add 2 eggs to that. And they're like, huh? Right? But I know that if I'm getting 2 eggs, that's 12 grams of protein. And if I've got 6 egg whites, that's going to be another like 18. So right there, I've got 30 grams, and I sprinkle in something like some feta. So that's an easy one for me to do. And generally I have like 2 pieces of bacon with it. If the other thing we like to do when we travel is we will get yogurts, and I have a bone broth collagen protein. So it's got a lot of collagen, some protein in there, and I will stir in 2 scoops of that into Greek style yogurt. And I'll basically do a double serving of Greek style yogurt in that. Sometimes, here's my guilty one that I love. It's a total processed food, but it's not a crappy one. And I think we have to be able to look at processed food like, protein powders are processed, but if you're eating good ones, they're not crappy. So I will take Greek yogurt. I'll take the my bone broth protein powder, put those together. I've got right there like 40 plus grams of protein. And then I'll use a little of this cereal called Catalina Crunch, which is basically fiber and protein. So I'll get up to 50 grams right there. And then lunch is always some kind of protein. So today we're ordering from Goop Kitchen, and I did a double chicken Chinese chicken salad. So I'll get like 8 or 9 ounces of chicken right there. And then we're going out to dinner with friends who know they're cooking dinner at the house, and they basically know we eat protein and vegetables. So, I'll eat anywhere from 6 to 10 ounces of protein at each meal.
Yeah.
With a lot of vegetables. And then I eat, lunch is usually vegetables with some protein and some berries, and dinner is vegetables with some protein, maybe berries, sometimes not.
Yeah.
Or a glass of wine.
Well, the reason that I appreciate you breaking it down is that when you actually hear it, it's not crazy.
No.
It's just unfamiliar for a lot of people. So everything that you said is something that
like
everybody listening would want to eat.
Yeah, like you could totally order, look at it. Like I look at most salads, and the way that people eat a salad, they turned basically a salad into a sundae. They got a bunch of lettuce, no calories. Then they got like some glazed nuts, sugar and fat. Then they got some kind of like salad dressing that's got either crappy oils or sugar or both, usually both in it. And then maybe there's a little bit of protein. Always double the protein. That's the answer. Always get a dressing on the side and find out. That's why I like the places like, oh God, you had the guy on the show.
Sweet Green.
And, the places where they're doing good dressings. If not, get straight olive oil. We actually now travel with little extra virgin olive oil packets and our sea salt. I'm like, we are so high maintenance. But, you just double up your protein. It's so easy.
That's the hack.
Right? That is the hack. And last night we ordered from this Tocoya Mexican place because I know they have cauliflower rice, and I could double up I had grass-fed carne asada and shrimp with it, and then double vegetables. Easy. And we travel all the time. So I'd say it's even easier because I always go, okay, what do they have that's grass-fed or pastured or wild? I'll get that. I always get dressings on the side. That's where you get in trouble. And then I always see what kind of vegetables they have and how they've been prepared. Because assume they've been prepared in some crappy thing unless they're steamed.
Yeah, totally. Sweet Greens is amazing. Takaya is amazing. True Food Kitchen.
Yes.
They also stopped using seed oils.
We have one in Tampa.
Everything is sourced super high quality. Love those guys. JJ, this has been amazing. It's been amazing because not only did you come in and give the super practical, no cost tip, everything you mentioned in the beginning, completely free, right? Minus the food that you have to purchase, which you're already doing anyway. And a lot of times protein is going to be cheaper in the long run. So everything free that you can do to dial in your body composition, accelerate fat burning, not just weight loss, and to appropriately track, audit, and make progress along the way, because you're reminding us that this is a mindset shift. We've been all brainwashed. We've been taught all these myths. We've been taught all these things that are incorrect for years. So this is stepping into a new way of looking at things and primarily doing it by a strategy that works long-term, which is adding in first.
Right. And habit stacking. We've all heard about habit stacking. It's, you want all of this to change, and it's remarkable how much your body can shift in a year. Like I look at Tim, my husband, who went from 25% to 10% body fat, lost 3 pounds, lost 27 pounds of fat, put on 24 pounds of muscle.
Amazing.
Entirely different, like better shape he's ever been in his entire life. And that was over the course of, I think, 10 months, not over the course of a month. The first month, like very little, little shifts, right? But it's just, you just stack on it. And you really monitor, am I getting stronger? How's my energy? Monitor all of those things. Don't let the scale without body composition be your judge, because you're not going to get the information from that. Like, look at Tim. He would have said, I lost 3 pounds. I worked for a year. I lost 3 pounds.
Right.
Right.
There's way more to the story.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about your world. How can people continue this conversation with you? You have a fantastic podcast. Tell us about that, and then some other things you're up to.
So I have Well Beyond 40, which is focused on really 50, 60, 70. How are you going? What do you need to do on a regular basis to age powerfully? I have my Eat Protein First Challenge, which is a free challenge at jjvirgin.com/protein first. What I'm really focusing on is giving people super actionable stuff that they can do. So the YouTube channel now, I'm starting to do a lot more exercise in there. I always was like, I'm not going to do that. I did that 30 years ago. But I realized that, a 60-year-old woman probably doesn't want to do exercise with a 25-year-old in booty shorts. I wouldn't, personally.
Yeah.
So I'm really trying to put those things in on, like I've got one in there on how to start a resistance training program. Because I think it's really important for us to look at this and go, I want to train to be better at life.
Yeah.
How do I need to do it? And then now I'm working on, like, what do we need to do for high intensity interval training, which is, we didn't even talk about that. So important as we age, to be putting things in like, fast explosive movement and jumping and agility and things that really get our heart rate up high. So those are the things that I'm putting onto YouTube, so that you really take out the excuse of I don't want to go to the gym, or I don't have the money, or because it's all there.
Yeah, it's all there. Amazing. And you have some great products and books and other things. They're all on your website, if you wouldn't mind mentioning it.
So that's jjvirgin.com. And I'm glad you mentioned the thing. So much of the biggest needle movers for our health are free.
Yes.
Right? They're not easy, and you don't want them to be easy. You actually want them to be hard, because then you get stronger and then everything feels easier. It is never too late to start. I mean, my husband's always been active. He's always been athletic. But the shift that he's made in the last 6 months, kind of, so I was like, now you get, I robbed the cradle, but I'm like, now it's your turn to get inspired for your 60th birthday. Like, let's go. Like, you have the opportunity now, because you have more knowledge, more access to things, and probably more time to really do these things. And all of a sudden you look and you go, I'm going to be able to do all this cool stuff for years. I remember we were in Santorini, and the stairs, have you been to Santorini?
I haven't, no.
So, like, to go to any hotel, you are like hiking up and down the stairs. Meanwhile, the guys carrying the luggage are like throwing your suitcases over their shoulders and running up and down the stairs. And I'm thinking, I want to be able to come here. We went down to a restaurant in Santorini, and we walked all the way down these stairs. Everyone took burros up and down, and we walked all the way back up it. And I went, I want to be able to do this at 70, at 80, at 90. And so what do I need to do? Like, because you think about it, we work so hard. My dad worked so hard his whole life because he had this plan for what he was going to do when he retired. The boat and the travel and everything else, and then retires, gets cancer, and he's gone. Like, whole thing. So you look and go, what do I need to do right now so that I can actually feel better than I ever have? Because it's possible. I think we don't think that. I remember when I was in Dr. Phil, he was like, don't think you're going to be able to be where you were in high school. I'm like, yeah, you're not going to be. You're going to be so much better than that. So much better than that. right? So what if you approached it that way of like, game on, I'm going to train now for the fun, cool stuff that I want to be able to do in a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades.
When it comes to this topic and it comes to women, women often have the burden of taking care
Everything.
of the whole family, right? Like everything is on their shoulders, right? And there's a conversation that I feel that needs to be had inside of that, which is this idea of reminding them that they have the permission to prioritize themselves.
Yes.
In a society that doesn't often allow for that. Can you talk about that?
No one else is going to do that for you. So if you don't decide that you're the priority, no one's going to go, you know what you should do today? You should take some self-care time. Why don't you do that? Like no one has ever said that to me, ever, like ever. So when I wrote the Miracle Mindset book that we did years ago, we did a podcast on, that was the clear thing. I remember standing in the hospital the night my son had been a victim of a hit and run at 16, literally left for dead in the street. The doctors told us to let him die. We overruled them and got him to Harbor UCLA, which is the number 2 trauma center in the country and just a miracle working hospital. But that first night I'm standing in the hospital. I'm like, okay, I have a 15-year-old at home. I'm 2 hours away. I have a 16-year-old literally between life and death, and I have no idea how long this is going to be, a week and he'll be fine, or is this forever? I have no idea. And I have the Virgin Diet coming out in a month. The launch starts, and I've invested everything that I possibly have in it. I'm the financial support for my family, and if that doesn't go, I will not be able to take care of my son. Holy smokes. I didn't say smokes. So what do I need to do? I'm not going to leave my son. Thankfully, the kid's dad was taking care of Bryce. I'm not leaving here. And this book has to go. And I thought, the only way I'm going to pull this off is to make sure that I get enough sleep, that I eat correctly, that I exercise, that I manage my stress. Literally, this was running through my mind. Now, I walked in very healthy. And I called my friends and I'm like, help. Like Dr. Hyla Cass walks in with all of her adrenal supplements. Dr. Daniel Lehman walks in with all the stuff to help Grant. I was like, help. But I prioritized my self-care because I knew that there was no way I could, first of all, you can't go into the pediatric ICU with a sniffle, much less being totally sick. So I had to, under that amount of stress, be at the top of my game. What if we all live like that? You never know when these things are going to come up, but we literally are being faced with challenges all the time. I can't face a challenge if I'm not at my best self. Like I can't. None of us can. Who can? I remember when I was in high school, I would sneak in my bed at night and take the flashlight and study because my mom was like, go to sleep. That won't help you. And she was right. Of course, moms always are. But, you got to prioritize your sleep, your eating, your exercise. Then you can really do the best for everybody. And we all say it, but we don't do it because we feel guilty doing it. I'd say you got to start to feel guilty if you're not being the best role model for your family of what it means to truly take great care of yourself. Because if you don't take great care of yourself, I always ask women if I'm coaching them, do you want your daughters to behave like this? Because they will. They're watching, right?
Right. They look up to you. They'll role model you as well. No, that's a powerful message. On that note, while we have our time here as we're winding down, I wanted to just briefly touch on two topics really quickly as part of that stack that you mentioned, and that's stress. And then also you chatted a little bit about it, sleep. As women age and when it comes to menopause, perimenopause, that whole combination of things, are there any things that are important for them to keep in mind on these topics that you've seen with all the work, all the clients, all the books that you've written, all the women you've coached? Let's talk about sleep first, and then we'll talk about stress.
Okay. Oh, I'm so excited about stress. Doesn't that sound bizarro? You want to do
stress first?
Well, we can just deal with sleep because I think it's actually even easier in a way. We don't need less sleep as we age. We need more, just like protein and exercise. Like all of those, right? So I think with women, so often we don't prioritize our sleep. So that's a biggie. The things that we have to look at as we're starting to go into menopause is that we have more issues, and this will feed directly into stress. What are the hormones that tend to go up during menopause? Cortisol and insulin. Like, talk about a way to pack belly fat on, but also to really mess up your sleep. And so, you know, number one, just like you're tracking your food and you're tracking your body composition, I am a huge believer in tracking sleep. Now, with a caveat, I wear both an Apple Watch and an Oura Ring. So does my husband, with the big joke of like, which one was better? You know, because one of the challenges I started to do as I was tracking my sleep and I saw that I got a crappy night's sleep is then I let that kind of dictate my day and I go, knock that off,
Right.
but use it for information to go, wow, you know, we actually found these super cool Philips Hue light bulbs that you can program on your phone to make your bedroom red at night. It is the greatest thing. So like I discovered all the blue light at night really messes me up like everybody else. So like you learn your habits and what you need to do to really prioritize your sleep, and tracking is the thing to help there. Now, cortisol is that thing that tends to go up as we're going into menopause, which just makes that whole thing worse. And during the pandemic, finally, I have avoided dealing with my stress side forever. I would deal with my stress side doing high intensity interval training because it helps train your sympathetic nervous system to handle stress better, and taking supplements because I didn't want to do the other thing, right? The other thing being like, you know, I would use tapping sometimes, I would use meditation, but it was not a consistent thing. And during the pandemic, I decided that I should go to Dr. Joe's week-long retreat. First of all, because there was nothing else to do, right? And so I go to the first one with a group of friends, and I didn't really pay attention to what I was going to, I will admit it. I listened to his books, like Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. You had some homework before you went to the retreat to listen to his trainings and then to do the meditations, but I did not do the meditations because I was going to a meditation retreat. So why would I do that? I'll do them there, right? And so I get there, and it's 35 hours. It's, first of all, you start between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. every morning, and you finish around 7, 8 o'clock at night. It's all these lectures and 35 hours of meditation.
Wow.
I'd never done more than 20 minutes of meditation. I'd never really done it because I was thinking about all things I needed to do. So now all of a sudden, except for 40 Years of Zen when I did that with Dave, because I thought I could get done with it in a week and then be done. That's like deciding you're going to do all your workouts in a week and then never work out again. So as I'm going through this first week and watching everyone around me have these profound experiences, and I'm in the middle of my head, I went, you know what? This is like training your nervous system, just like you would train your musculoskeletal system. This is training your nervous system. And I wouldn't ever think that I could train my musculoskeletal system for a week and be done. So I am going to double down on this. I went back. I did it in April. I did it in June. I did it in September. By then, I'm now friends with Dr. Joe and having dinner with him and like telling him all this stuff. And in September, I'm having dinner with him. And I said, you know, I've been doing this for 6 months. I've now been doing it, by the way, for over a year and a half, whatever, like 2 years. Yeah. But at that point, I've been doing it 6 months, which was my first commitment. And I go, the weirdest thing happened. I'm meditating. I didn't change anything in what I eat or exercise. And I lost 5 pounds.
Wow.
We see that when people start sleeping well. But basically, I had lived my life forever in flight or fight. And all of a sudden, my body, and I'd had chronic shortness of breath my entire adult life. At first, I was like, it's exercise-induced asthma. I was like in so much denial. I go to this pulmonologist. He goes, it's anxiety. I go, it's not anxiety. You know, it's like, I just lived like this chronically. And all of a sudden I went, I haven't had shortness of breath since. Like it's gone. Like dropped 5 pounds. I was like, and he goes, yeah. So Dr. Joe says, you know, you're going to become nobody, nowhere, and nothing. And he goes, yeah, it's called the nothing diet. That's really funny. But I say that because quite often we think, oh, I just need to cut my calories more. I need to work out harder. It's like, if you are not addressing these hidden areas of what I call weight loss resistance, poor sleep, chronic stress, think about what it does to you. It makes your gut more permeable. Now you will have food intolerances. That will create inflammation. That causes insulin resistance and causes cravings and weight gain. It will mess up your serotonin and your dopamine. So all of a sudden, you're craving more food and it's not Brussels sprouts and broccoli and salmon, right? It will mess up your serotonin. It will mess up your melatonin and mess up your sleep. It will break down muscle. It will raise blood sugar. I used to see clients early on that would have, everything made sense. Their triglycerides look great. Their cholesterol looked great. And they had this bizarro elevated blood sugar, and it was stress. So this is that thing that you can't just ignore. And ridiculous that I ignored it for as long as I did. So it's like a, cautionary tale. If you're one of those people out there that's like, okay, I'll just do more HIIT training to handle it. The meditation commitment, like going to Dr. Joe's and then going, and now you do this every morning. And I'm like, I don't have time for this. The craziest thing is meditating in the mornings has given me so much time. I can solve so much there. I'll just get things done in the quantum. It's like I save so much time, So huge
you don't spend
drop.
a lot of your day constantly reacting to things, the inertia of
Oh, this is
everything
even
that's there.
funnier that you brought that up. So my team goes, we've been tracking you since you started this meditation, and we would like you to keep going because the difference is unbelievable. Nothing, I am in the color code is super red. I am in a quick start on Colby. I'm a super would be very reactive. And it's like, it's like now I can just take a breath, pause. It's quite a gift. So whatever someone's bliss is, again, there's so many options out there. Find the thing that works for you. It's like that missing element of wellness that really you can't be truly healthy without.
A great reminder. And I so appreciate you opening up about not just that, but so many other aspects. As you mentioned, we did a whole podcast about the miracle mindset, everything you went through, your son. By the way, how's your son doing today?
He was doing a lot better and then got re-injured. So thankfully, I have the most amazing team. Shout out to Dr. Daniel Amen, Dr. Kara Hopner, Dr. Kat Toops. I mean, I have the most incredible people around me. And so we just went back into it and started healing it again. So, it's been a frustrating journey, but on the other hand, he's here. We did a 10-year kind of birthday party for him because this was someone who wasn't supposed to live through the night. So he was like, I'm just so grateful to be here.
And obviously, hit and run, extreme example of some of the things that can happen in the zigs and zags of life, but we're all going to have something, some event, some situation, the loss of a loved one, something that's there.
I'd say plural.
Right? Plural for some people that are out there. And it's just another reminder of why we need that core element of resilience, feeling good, strength training, eating well, taking care of our body, because if we can't show up for ourselves, we're not the best person for everybody else around us.
Amen.
JJ, this has been great. Talk a little bit about your world of how people can keep in touch. You have some great products out there as well, too. A podcast of your own, which I've been seeing higher and higher on the charts. So congratulations on that. So talk a little bit about that.
Thank you. Well, we rebranded it. I'm in love with this name. I did not think of it. The team did. Well Beyond 40.
Yeah. And
it really is. My whole focus now is aging powerfully and helping women go, wow, this is really my time. It's prime time. Let's go. So that we are now building the podcast channel too. I'm back. I got back so reinvigorated. There was something about the 60th birthday. I've got a new book that's going to be coming out next year. We're building. I just was like this. I'm so fired up. I'm more excited. I feel like everything that I studied in my 20s that I was talking about back then and I was getting bashed for. Early on, I said, your body's not a bank account, it's a chemistry lab. And it was I said, the earth is really flat. People were like, that's not true. So I just feel like it's all come full circle. And I'm so excited about it. I'm more excited about what's going on now because now we have such great tools too than I was back then. So it's really fun. So now I'm really doubling down on my Instagram and YouTube and the podcast. And we did a really fun Eat Protein First challenge just for 7 days. Again, everything is just do this, just this one thing. I love the book by Gary Keller, That One Thing.
One of my favorite books.
Right? I always say I should read it every day because as an entrepreneur, what do you want to do? Everything. No, do one thing. Do it really well. So there was so much stuff that we talked about here, and I'm sure in this series there'll be a lot of things. And as you're listening, there's probably that one thing that you go, oh, that. Because you just continue to build on that. You turn back, we started at the beginning of the year with all these crazy things we want to do, and we do none of them. But if we just started, whenever we start with one thing, we can look back a year later and go, look at all the stuff that changed.
Hey, YouTube, if you enjoyed what you just saw, keep watching for more great content on how to improve your brain and your life.
Protein is not a fuel. I don't think on any label you look at, protein should be counted as having a caloric load. It is a rare instance when you're relying on amino acids for energy. That is not common. It's not healthy.